Hi, this is Michael Waits recording live from Money 2020 Asia 2025 in Bangkok. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Insurance for the New Possible, where we discuss the future of finance, technology, and insurance. We are joined today by Trina Yeung, the CFO at Atome Financial. Thank you so much for joining the show, and thank you for joining us at Money 2020 Asia 2025. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm super excited to do this. It's my first podcast, so I'm actually excited to see how it works out.
I can't wait as well. Okay, let's jump right into this. Atome Financial is a leading digital financial services platform in Asia. How do you see insurance fitting into your ecosystem, both as a revenue driver, but also as a value add to customers?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because actually the first week that I joined Atome about 5.5 years ago now, I actually went to see Chubb with my chief commercial officer at the time.
Okay.
And we had figured out that even back then, before Atome was even really built, that insurance should form a really key part of what we were going to offer our customer base. The reason for that is because for a lot of the customers that we serve, they don't really typically have access to insurance, right? Even in the simplest form that we currently provide them today, which I'll give you an example. Atome is currently a buy now, pay later solution. It's also a lending platform for microloans and day-to-day type cash loans that it requires. And customers may not be able to pay if they have accidents or have certain emergencies or lose their jobs. And that really is a real issue for a lot of the segment that we are serving. So by paying, a few cents, they're able to get coverage and have that peace of mind. So I think it was a really important component of what we wanted to be able to offer to the customers.
Have you found in the last 5.5 years since you first started having these conversations, I like to say that economic growth in Asia and Southeast Asia in particular is pretty good. And even if some of your clients or cohorts are using BNPL, at some point they do start to acquire assets. Do they think more once they acquire those assets as well, not just for payment protection, but also for device protection or asset protection? When I say assets, like even buying clothing or moving into a nicer house or buying a car, do you see that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that, which is why we also offer insurance in partnership with Chubb at point of checkout for ensuring that, if your device breaks down, that you don't have to go and argue with whoever you bought the device from. The policy is expired from the warranty period and all of those things, and they can deal directly with Chubb with no questions asked, right? So I think it has evolved. And the next leg of what we want to do, and I think that's, would love to hear if you think it will be useful for you, is if we are able to identify actually what the customer may want to be able to buy insurance for, right? Not bombard you with, do you want insurance for everything under the sun, but actually be able to predict what you place a lot of value on and say, okay, let's be selective about how we provide you and what we provide you insurance for.
So this brings up this contextuality, right, and relevance. How do you do that? I presume as a BNPL company, but also as a company that's doing, like you said, these loans, you're getting a lot of data on what your customers and clients are doing. How then do you back into this idea of relevance and contextuality based on that data?
Yeah. So this is the balance between trying not to be too intrusive in the experience and the journey, but also really learning what our customers' preferences and behaviors are by the clues and the way that they're interacting with our app and checking out when they are using Atome, right? So for example, if we see that you're frequently checking out sneakers, right? Maybe then we know, okay, that is something that is very important and personal to that user.
Right.
And we will start to engage more and offer more of these types of offering. And sometimes we will also collaborate with the brands such as Adidas, Nike, and be able to offer, hey, we're running a special preview promotion for all of these campaigns. Would you like to, all of these brands, would you like to join? Right. So that's where we see that if there is feedback and people are interested in these things, we do know that that must be something that is very important for that consumer. Similarly, when people have changes in their life phases, for example, when you have your first child, right?
I was just thinking.
Yeah. So those are milestone events. And I remember when I had my first child, it was super important. And that was when I bought, life insurance for the first time.
Right.
Right.
Because you're thinking, what happens to my child?
Exactly.
Something bad happens to me. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So those are exactly the things that are top of mind for consumers. And we want to make sure that whatever we offer is also in the right context of that individual as well.
Does Atome see this happening as well? As your clients move on from the necessity of BNPL, right? Because they may not be able to afford in one shot being able to buy something, but as they become more financially successful, they still use your products because they're just used to the way they've been paying for things and buying things.
Yeah, I mean,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So when we designed Atome as an app, it was designed really for convenience.
Yeah.
So we tried to minimize the number of clicks that you need to enable payment. So actually, a lot of our merchants that we partner with see us as a checkout option, not necessarily just for financing.
Right.
And anybody that uses Atome to check out, I mean, whilst it's great that you can pay in 3 and incur zero cost for doing that as a consumer,
right?
So you have 3 months before having to pay the whole outstanding balance. You can also choose to pay the whole amount today as well, which makes it super convenient if you don't want to have to deal with, remembering to pay or the auto deducts that we put through. So, yeah, it really is quite a convenience tool that we are trying to instill into the journey.
I like it. So one of the words you said earlier was collaborating with brands. And I mentioned this before we started recording, right? But I have this saying that I use on the Asia Tech podcast, and that is, nobody succeeds alone. And I really believe that strongly, whether it's in your own business or in a much bigger business. But this whole event is about collaboration. Maybe you can talk to me a little bit more about just how you view collaborations from a 35,000 foot level, because you already talked about collaborating with Chubb, collaborating with Adidas and Nike and other companies like that. How do you look at it and how do you approach it? How do you know where a good one is? How do you know what a bad one is? And what's the idea?
Yeah. I think collaboration is a lot like marriage. You've got to kind of date a lot to figure out what works and what doesn't.
I like it. So we used to say you don't have to marry the first person you dance with, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. So, actually, I used to work in London, and I think that in London, a lot of the transactions are much more transactional.
Fair enough.
And here in Asia, which is why I think it's so meaningful to have a conversation about collaboration in Asia, because I think that this is a market that collaboration is super important.
Right.
Because I do believe that you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
There are strengths in many of the players out here. And you need to be able to find the ones that really complement the skills or the expertise that we already have, right?
Right.
So we are known more in the lending, the risk management, and buy now, pay later space. Without working with somebody like Chubb, it would be impossible for us to even design or figure out what insurance should look like for a consumer, right?
How would you know?
Yeah. So I think without these types of collaborations, you cannot, blend together and create something that is better for the customer base.
Do you find that the collaborative process is different on kind of like a country by country basis? Like, do you see cultural differences that say, I'm doing the same thing with the same company, but I have to do it slightly different in, let's say, Thailand than I would in Malaysia?
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily country by country. It's really in the DNA of the company that you're working with.
Fair enough.
So if I may share my experience with Chubb, I feel that Chubb is very clear and methodical in how they work with partners. They clearly have done it, many, many times and know what works and what doesn't, right? So that's kind of the first layer. But the second layer is really getting down and figuring out actually, what are the nuts and bolts and the components of creating a successful collaboration and ensuring that what we need as Atome and representing our customers is what they can also deliver. So there is a lot of back and forth around, what they have to offer, what will create success for the both of us together.
So do you find, like, I was always a process guy when I was at Goldman Sachs. if I figured out a really efficient, great way to do something that ended up being profitable, just keep repeating it until it didn't work anymore. Right. I was really good at methodology. Yeah. I'm curious if so you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you were going to ask me if that is, having the same formula is the right way to.
What I was going to ask you actually is, as you go more and more and build more partnerships, you learn along the way and add little things into your process. So you think, oh, last time we should have done this, but now we can do all of these things together. And as you get the process down, you learn more, and it becomes easier to understand whether you are aligned or aren't aligned because you have a process in place to figure that out.
Yeah, a little bit of that for sure. But actually, I think we're learning about ourselves as well as an organization.
Good answer. I like it. Go
so
ahead.
It's also easier for us to know what we like and don't like in the process.
Right.
So it's easier to identify faster the people that we will work well with.
I want to go back to your analogy. Yeah. It's like dating in a way. You're like, this is not good. Like dinner's good, but this is not going to work.
Yeah, it's like there is somebody for everybody out there, So, but you just got to find the right match.
Not for me. Yeah. Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
I use dating analogies a lot. Not to be funny, but because I think it's something that everybody understands.
Yeah.
And it's visceral to people. They can feel it. And I think it's the same thing with these types of partnerships. Yeah.
And I think, to extend the dating analogy, right? I think, where a partnership has been there for a long time, sometimes you may want to mix things up and really overhaul the partnership.
Yeah.
Say, okay, we've done all of these things, but now we need to take things to the next level. How do we change things and do something radical? And those are the conversations that we would love to have. So, aside from Chubb, we also partner with Standard Chartered, who's another event sponsor here. We've been working with them for the past 5 years. Okay. And I think, the first leg of what we built together was very good. Mm-hmm. And now we're in discussions to figure out, what do we want to do next together, right? And it's going to be completely different to how we had partnered before. And I'm super excited about that because we figured out that, yes, we work well together and we have mutual benefits on how we can create value together. But let's do something that is going to be completely different.
I like it a lot. So I think about this in terms of momentum and inertia, right? The momentum at the beginning is huge and it kind of drives what's going on. Everyone's excited, but at some point it just starts working and then inertia takes over. It just starts going in the same direction. And then it's a great time to say, what should we do that's bigger and better?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. What does democratizing access to credit and services mean to Atome? And why is enabling financial resilience to people so important?
It has to be thought in the context of the markets that we operate in. Atome is present in predominantly ASEAN countries such as Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, where we've the customer base there. It's relatively bifurcated. So either you have access to financial services
or you don't.
Exactly.
Right. It's like I have some, it's either 0 or 1.
Yeah. And for the vast majority of people that we encounter at this conference, they would have, everybody here probably has a banking relationship.
Or a credit card or something. Yeah.
And probably the vast majority of people here have not gone into the suburbs and the countryside of these countries and really seen actually how these people live their day-to-day lives and do not even have a bank within walking distance of them, right?
So they don't even know what they're missing because they're not walking past it every day thinking, I need that.
Exactly. So it's very easy to think that, why would you offer a buy now, pay later service to the population here? But the reality is that we're not really serving the customer base that we see on a day-to-day basis ourselves. So for the customers that we are serving, a lot of them, this is their kind of first financial access to financial services. And they've never had a credit score or understood how even credit works. And for them, it's been it's a way of convenience for them because they're able to use their mobile phone to buy things online that they never really had access to. Don't have to go figure out how to pay with cash at the 7-Eleven or the Alpha
Scan a QR
Mart.
code or do all this stuff.
Yeah. So that's one area that kind of really changed or improve the way that people are able to operate their day to day. One example that I had recently when we were in Philippines, we were hearing a story about a customer that called into our customer service and just wanted to thank us to say, I was actually able to use the credit that you gave me to buy goods so that I could resell them for my little mom and pop corner store that I have. And
That's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
so literally people are using it to finance their day-to-day businesses because they're sole proprietors, but they're not seen as an organization, so they cannot get financing in any way. But because we give them 30 days free credit and so on, that they don't even have to pay to use our service, and they're able to finance their inventory for their little corner store.
So this is really interesting. They're actually reversing this methodology where they normally have, immediate payment, but their suppliers require them to pay right away, but they have 90-day payment back to them.
Yeah.
But they're using it. So but these are unanticipated consequences, right? Are there other ways? Because I'm thinking in my head, how do people who have access to financial services, who've always had access to financial services, build those services for people that don't? Because how do you know how that feels and what they actually need? And I don't mean you, but we're in the same boat here, I guess.
Well, I mean that let me give you the exact example of the collaboration that we have with Standard Chartered and explain why it worked so well, right? So Standard Chartered is one of those banks that have been providing financial services in Asia region for the longest time.
Forever, yeah.
So they understand the market very, very well, but they've only been able to service the top segments.
Right.
And when it comes to essentially micro loans that we have, if you're lending $20, $30 to somebody, it is very difficult for a large institution to even be able to create the infrastructure to organize how to lend somebody $20.
Because their system's not built to handle that at any level. And it's hard to explain why, but that's just true.
Exactly. So that's where, Atome's technology came in and said, okay, we have the app, we have the connectivity to allow us to be able to allow customers to make payments and then repay us electronically, and to handle all of those flows on a micro level.
Right.
And that's where Standard Chartered came in and said, okay, we will provide you financing to support all of these customers.
Because now you're giving them access to new clients.
Exactly.
So even though they're making, I don't know how they make their, I know how they make their money, but I'm just saying they didn't have access to those clients at all. And they wouldn't have thought about serving them because their system was just fundamentally not set up. But now that you can give them access to it, they're happy to give you the credit to then fan that credit out to the rest of your cohorts, right?
Exactly.
I like it.
So, we're the bridge that allows, a new layer and a new segment of customers that were never able to have banking services before to be able to get access to that.
So when you go and have your initial conversations with Standard Chartered and other partners like that, what kind of alternative data? Because you talked about credit scoring and just understanding how that works. There's got to be a way to evaluate whether somebody's actually creditworthy or not.
Yeah.
But again, if they don't have a bank account, they haven't been paying bills in a way that's regular, how do you figure that stuff out? And what kind of alternative data are you looking at?
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. That is the second layer of the kind of solution that we offer to Standard Chartered, right? So aside from allowing for that infrastructure to be there, the second piece is, well, how do you even know who to lend to, right? When most of these people have never had banking services before. And that's where we're using alternative data to really understand our consumers. So, for people like you and me, it's very easy and for the banks to figure out,
evaluate us, yeah.
Yeah, you have a college degree, do you have a proper job?
No, I don't, but still.
The general question, the usual questions, right?
Right.
So if you try to apply that to the customer base that we have,
it's meaningless.
We're not going to be lending to anybody anytime soon.
Right.
And that's exactly the problem that the big banks have been facing.
Right.
So when we use our alternative data score, it's over 1,000 data points that we're credit scoring for.
Wow.
And all of them add to or detract from your baseline score, right? And we're building a profile of the customer. Kind of actually, in my mind, how banks used to run maybe 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, 100 years ago, whatever. Yeah, when they first started.
You would literally walk into a branch and you go, okay, well, does this person seem like a nice guy? Does he look like they could probably
do you work in
me?
this town?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
So, you're kind of trying to build a qualitative profile of somebody,
right?
To see if they are probably trustworthy and we think that they'll be able to pay back. So some of the things that we do, for example, would look at social media profiles and a length of history that somebody has, to kind of kind of just get a feel for somebody.
Well, like, are they just living a consistent life?
Yeah.
Kind of. Okay,
So
go ahead.
it's not tangible, and it's not, slam dunk that somebody's going to pay us back, but that's the kind of thing that, we need to take a bet on. Otherwise, we'll never be able to lend to anybody.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's true for big banks as well, just using a completely different data set, right? So if I take out a loan and I pay off my home loan, when I go back in to get another loan, they're like, you've already done it with us. We can give you more credit. Is that the same thing that you guys are doing as well?
Yeah, we do that. But I think also, for the first loan, it is, okay, we need to do things in a different way and make a different set of assessments.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll never evolve from where we were, the last 20 years.
Before I let you go, what is driving the growth in this region for Atome? Because you're growing pretty fast, yeah?
The fact that there is a huge unbanked population. So I think something like the top 30% of use Philippines as an example, right? Of the population are banked in some way.
Right.
That means that there's still another 70% that don't have access to anything that is half sensible, right? So there is a lot of blank space to fill.
Yeah.
And to give you another example of how successful Atome has been, in the last 18 months since we launched our card product, most consumers have not had access to a credit card type product in Philippines before. So we've, at least we're kind of scratching the surface and getting there, and allowing people to have that convenience.
Do you expect, as people see, right? Because if I live in a town that's been fundamentally underbanked and underserved, and I'm one of the first people, it's like getting the first television set. You're like, oh my God, my neighbor has a TV. I need a TV. You can see how old I am. But do you see the same thing in the credit markets as well, where they see their neighbors acquiring things and thinking, I make the same amount of money, like I live the same financial life you live. How can I do what you're doing? And does the credit card help facilitate that? Do you know what I mean?
In certain markets, yes, there is a certain, I guess,
missing out. Yeah, prestige for sure.
Of having
credit card,
the card. So I definitely think there is some of that. But I think once you have access to that, the benefit in terms of the convenience and the way that you can interact with your money, I think I think those things actually shine through in terms of the benefits that you're able to see. Okay, that's super. I'm going to let you go. Trina Yeung, the CFO at Atome Financial. Thank you so much for doing this today. Thank you. Thanks for having me.